massive food and fuel news is going on. We are seeing food rationing begin at major grocery store chains. We are also seeing U.S. regulators warn that over 80 million Americans are at risk of emergencies coming up very soon, all right? 80 million. 80 million. And it's probably more than that, all right? Because everyone's at risk for what's coming next. So let's dive into what's happening. Farmers are warning us. Lots of big news today. Pipelines are getting messed up, all right? All this stuff, rationing, food rationing's happening. Lots of big things are happening, and it seems like we are accelerating into this collapse, all right? And it's revealing itself every single day. It's getting closer. All these things are unprecedented. We've never had any of these things happen before, but we're getting used to it. We're slowly just getting used to these things and adapting, and just it's becoming normal. It's the new normal, all right? We've heard that term a lot, the new normal. This is also the new normal now. Food and fuel shortages, and also 80 million Americans at risk right now. All right, we'll get into that in just a second. The warning that U.S. regulators are giving us, this is serious. But let's get into this warning that farmers are giving us as well. All right, so a struggling farmer in New Jersey is giving us a warning. All right, he's telling us that things are about to hit the fan on his farm. All right, he doesn't know if he's going to be able to keep going. So U.S. farmer worried that policies in place put the industry in jeopardy. Inflation, energy, and labor costs are a major concern for one struggling New Jersey farm. So Nicole Moak, the manager of Ort Farms in Long Valley, New Jersey, is putting the onus on leaders and politicians to, quote, step up and protect American agriculture. All right, I've made countless videos over the past 6+ months of farmers warning us, all right, because it keeps happening. They keep coming out and sounding the alarm bell, but nothing changes. Nobody cares. Nobody listens to them. They're just like, whatever, you're just some farmer in New Jersey. We're not worried about you. You know what I mean? You're one vote. You're one vote. On to the next one, all right? And this is the warning that she was giving. This is a grave warning that no one is taking serious in the United States, all right? Because the United States is changing. The United States is changing from a superpower, energy superpower, food superpower, military superpower. It's being depleted, and it's being just all that's being taken away from us. We are changing into something different, all right? America has to be brought down for the next phase of this globalist agenda to be implemented, all right? That's just how it is. So this is what she said, and this is true, and this is scary. Quote, the USDA is saying that for the first time ever, the U.S. is going to import more food than we export. All right? That's scary. Why is the U.S. importing more food than it exports? Why do we need to do that? All right? Quote, the USDA is saying for the first time ever, the U.S. is supposed to be the breadbasket of the world. We're supposed to produce enough food to export to the world so other countries can have access to food too, because there's a lot of countries that can't even produce the food. They don't even have the farmland. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have it all to produce the food as efficiently that we can on a mass scale. And there's countries all over the world that depend on our exports, but for some reason now we are importing more than we are exporting. This is not a good sign. Not a good sign, all right? And she said it would further the U.S.'s dependence on foreign nations as well, obviously, because we are subject. Why? And a lot of this food is imported from like not highly developed countries. It's not like we're importing it from like Europe or something, or like a lot of it's just imported from South America, okay? A lot of it's imported from Mexico. A lot of it's imported from less developed nations that shouldn't be producing more food than the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't have to be relying on Mexico and South America. I mean, I'm grateful there's people growing food down there, all right? Because we need people growing food all over the world. We need as much food as possible, but we as America, it's just like the oil thing. It's like, why are we begging Venezuela to produce oil? Why are we begging this guy to produce oil? It doesn't even make sense. They should just produce oil in their own self interest as a country because oil prices are good right now. They can make money. But as our own self interest as America, why don't we just produce more oil? I just don't get it. We have the most oil reserves in the world. We could be the biggest one in the world, but we refuse to take this title. And it's the same thing with food. We have the most productive food system and farmland in the world, and the US is denying it. Why do you think all of these foreign countries come to the US and buy up all of our farmland? Because they know it's some of the best farmland in the world, most productive in the world, some of the best soil in the world, some of the best seasonality, weather patterns, all this stuff, water, all this stuff. It's some of the best places in the world. Iowa, Nebraska, some of the richest soil. And why do you think these foreign countries are buying up all this farmland? Because they don't have enough farmland in their own country. They need to come here and buy it up. And they get to use all of our resources. They get to use our water. They get to use the minerals in our soil. This is technically mining, right? A lot of farming in certain states, you have to have mineral rights just to farm because technically the plants are mining minerals out of the ground. They are sucking minerals out of the ground and you are exporting it to a different location and those minerals don't go back in. So a lot of these foreign countries are also doing this as well. We'll get into all this other stuff too. Food rationing going on at major grocery stores and also 80 million Americans at risk. Bunch of other stuff going on. But I just wanted to tackle this because this is critical. These farmers are warning us all over the world, right? Look at these farm protests in the Netherlands. Look at this. They are shutting down streets, shutting down supermarkets, shutting down the roads because they can't afford to make a living, right? It's one of these things where all the prices and everything aren't matching up. We're having incredible inflation, right? But the farmers aren't even getting a lot of this bonus from this inflation. They're supposed to be making a lot more money. They're maybe making a little bit more money, but on top of all of the cost that they are experiencing for fuel, fertilizer, all this stuff, they really aren't even making more money. And some farms are making less money, like this farmer. So let's dive into what they said, and we'll get into all these other topics too. Stay tuned, guys. Lots of news. It's all important. So it says, quote, "We have the ability to feed our people and feed the world and have a good position in the world market." That's what the owner of Ort Farms in Long Valley, New Jersey is saying. "If the policies don't allow us to take advantage of the opportunity, it's really detrimental to the industry, detrimental to small businesses, and our national security." She's right on target, right over the target. She's a farmer. She knows what's happening, right? Raging inflation has put a major dent in American homestead profits. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed that energy costs rose 41.6%. The price of tools went up 10.6%. New trucks increased 11.1%. And all this other stuff went up too, right? And they also went on to say that fertilizer prices rose at least 45% year over year. And I've seen tons of farmers say it's not 45%, it's 300%. That's what they're saying, 300% price increase in fertilizer, right? And how are you supposed to plan your business? Because by the time when you plant your crop and fertilizer and everything, by the time you harvest, prices are totally different. They could be way higher, way lower. You don't know where the market's at. It's such a volatile market for farmers, and they are struggling, right? They're struggling. So that was the key takeaway from this. So first time ever, U.S. is importing more food than we export. That's what she told us, and that's just not okay. That's not what the U.S. should be doing. And look out for this to get even worse, because one of the main factors for farmers is fuel, is diesel. And now we are seeing another pipeline. I know I was talking about a different pipeline that's been shut down for months from an explosion in June. This is another pipeline in Texas. That one's in Texas too. Texas pipelines are getting shut down for some reason. So the Shell's Zydeco oil pipeline starts running at reduced capacity. It says the pipeline from Houston to Port Neches, Texas, is operating at a reduced capacity due to a project work at Port Neches and is expected to remain at reduced capacity until mid to late December, the company said. The Zydeco pipeline system alleviates transportation bottlenecks of crude arriving in Houston from the Eagle Ford, Permian, and Bakken regions, according to Shell's Midstream Partners website. And the Permian base accounts for almost 40% of all U.S. Oil production, right? So fossil fuel production, 40%. It's a massive amount. And it says this pipeline alleviates bottlenecks from these basins, all right, these critical basins. It says the system connects several crude oil pipelines in Houston and Port Neches and spans over 350 miles with a mainline capacity of 375,000 barrels per day. It's a lot. It's not a small amount for the U.S. I think the U.S. uses like 9 million a day. Don't quote me on that. It's somewhere in that ballpark. So that's still a massive amount. That's still a massive percentage of the U.S. And especially for Texas and the South, I'm sure that's a good 10% down there, all right? At least that's a huge amount. So look for energy prices to go up. And it says they already have went up. It says the capacity reduction from the line sent some U.S. physical crude oil grades surging, all right? So prices already instantly react to this because there's a reduced capacity. They're saying there's not going to be able to send as much oil through this pipeline as it should. Just another thing, and it's just very suspicious. Like, we're in the middle of a diesel crisis. The oil reserves are drained to their lowest levels they've ever been, almost essentially empty. And now we're reducing our pipeline capacity as well for one of the biggest pipelines in the country in Texas, all right? After another one, a liquid natural gas pipeline. This is a crude oil pipeline. So it's a little bit different, but it's a energy pipeline. After that, liquid natural gas pipeline was already shut down in Texas as well, right? I think that's the Freeport pipeline. I think that's what it's called. And now this one too, right? Just how many more hits can the U.S. consumer take? Like, how many more hits can we take? You know what I mean? How long can this go on? So let's dive into this. Let's talk about Europe too, because this is all interconnected. And then we'll get into food rationing and 80 million Americans at risk as well. All right, we will get into all that in just a second. But let's talk about what's happening in the UK right now, because this is huge and this is intentional. This is on purpose. And I will point out the hypocrisy of all this as well, because it doesn't even make sense. All right, so UK citizens pay the highest electricity bills in the world. So if you live in the UK, I'm sorry about that. All right. When I first read this, I swear I thought it said US citizens, because I was like, we have to pay the highest here. The prices are crazy high. But I guess you guys in the UK have it even worse. All right. So you guys win. Congratulations. It's crazy. Germany, places like that, in France, they've seen 1,000% increases. 1,000%. That's a 10xing of their energy prices as well on certain things. All right. So it's happening, guys. We are entering a massive great reset. And this is what's going to be one of the keys to it is energy. Energy drives everything. All right. It says the study on government electricity and gas price data reveals that Brits pay the world's highest energy bills. It said also Norway is the country with the biggest increase in electricity prices worldwide over the past year. So UK pays the highest overall, but Norway's had the highest increase over the past year, apparently. And it says the UK's energy price cap was recently raised from 28 per kilowatt, 28 pounds per kilowatt to 34 pounds per kilowatt. All right. So they even have a energy cap in the UK. They have an energy cap on the price they can charge for energy, but they still have the highest prices in the world. Tell me how that makes sense. Tell me how that works. That's why I'm so worried about this December 5th oil embargo that we are seeing. All right. The US, the EU, Japan, the G7 countries have all implemented a massive oil embargo, okay, on Russian oil, and it happens on December 5th, and they will no longer insure Russian ships. They will no longer allow them to dock at any of these European ports. All these things, there's a lot of implications to it, all right? There's a lot of technicalities to it that is going to disqualify massive amounts of the world's oil supply just because it came from Russia. Even if it went through someone else, they're trying to clamp down on all of it, and they're trying to say they're not going to provide insurance to anyone either that associates with these Russian oil ships, oil fleet, oil cargo, all this stuff. They're also saying, if you are interacting with them, you are trying to like skirt our rules, we will also not give you insurance. Very dangerous, very sketchy. And there's international laws, there's country laws, all this stuff that they have to have insurance on this oil cargo in case there's a spill. All right, it's a lot of rigmarole, a lot of just regulations and stuff, but it's gonna shut out a massive amount of the international oil markets for the US, Europe, Japan. These G7 countries are all just saying, nope, we're not, because there's been restrictions on it for the past, 6-9 months, but this is a straight up ban, and this is a straight up ban of them even providing insurance, all this stuff. This is really gonna change everything on December 1st, all right? And it's gonna make energy prices go even higher. And the reason I brought this up, because UK has a price cap on their energy right now, right? They have a price cap on their energy, but they still have the highest energy prices in the world. Just tell me how that makes sense. Somebody explain that to me. Highest energy prices in the world, but they still have price caps. It's like, how is this possible? And the reason is because producers can't make money, all right? So they put a price cap in. It costs them more money to make the energy. They can't make any money by selling it. They're literally just losing money. No business can do this. No board will allow a company to operate like this. Will just allow a company to just like give money away. So they literally shut down. Energy company shuts down. They can't make money. And then it creates even more energy shortages, and it makes prices even higher. This is why these price caps don't work. They've tried this in so many different countries, and that's what happens. They put a price cap. The companies say, okay, we can't do it anymore. They fall out, and then there's even less companies producing less things, and supply and demand, it just makes the price even higher, right? Or what really happens is they just have a price cap, and then there's just shortages. There's just massive gaps. There's just no gasoline. There's just no whatever the price cap's on. It's just not there anymore because there's no producers. Nobody is producing it. That's what actually happens, all right? So doesn't make sense to me. Somebody please explain it. Highest energy prices. I know all of these energy markets are out of whack, but honestly, it's been the US and the EU implementing these sanctions that have done it. It's honestly, that's been the biggest factor. And now we've seen such turmoil in it. We are seeing OPEC also respond, and OPEC Plus with Russia saying they are also going to reduce capacity as well. So they're going to fight back. They're saying, well, if you're going to cut us off, we're going to cut you off. You know what I mean? It's this tit for tat. and it's just going to make it even worse. We're just going to get hit even harder, right? And the thing is, the people that make all these policies and stuff, it doesn't really affect them. They don't really care if gas is like $10 a gallon or whatever. They're just like, okay, like it's gas. It still just like seems affordable to them because they just make so much money. They're just like unrelatable, right? They're like on a different planet. It's just not a big deal if gas is 10 or 20 bucks. They're like, okay, well, yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal if food's inflated double, triple, quadruple, 10x in price. It's not a big deal if energy prices double, triple, 10x. It's just like it doesn't affect them that much because, yeah, if you're a billionaire, you're making millions. Like, it's just, yeah, a few extra $100, a few extra $1,000 a month. They don't even see it. They don't even notice it. So they think it's no big deal. No big deal. But then everyday people are screwed, completely screwed over. All right. So let's get into food rationing. Food rationing is beginning, and they are trying to think of any excuse to do this, all right? Because they want to implement this, they want to push this. And this farmer, there's another farmer coming out that is exposing this supermarket and is telling them that, and is telling the media that they are manipulating these prices. They are manipulating the rationing, and they are doing this on purpose. And there's actually not even a shortage. It's just like this price control thing. I'm telling you, there's not actually an energy shortage. Why did we have enough energy? Why were gas prices $1 a couple years ago? Like, I know there was low demand, all that stuff, but even before all this stuff happened, 2019, gas prices were still what, like 250 to around $2. Like, they were still super cheap. All right. And the world had enough energy somehow. World magically had enough energy, but it's being cut off. It's just like this pipeline is operating at reduced capacity. Why is this happening? Why is it at reduced capacity? It's just all these things are hitting it. It's not what they say is actually going on. So British supermarkets to begin rationing eggs. And we'll get into 80 million Americans at risk as well too. You need to hear this because you could be in a state or an area that's at risk and you need to get prepared urgently. All right, we'll get into that in just a second. But British supermarkets are now rationing eggs. All right, and this is just the start, guys. This is just the start. Major supermarket chains, Asda and Lidl have started rationing the number of boxes of eggs customers can buy owing to supply chain issues. Both stores said that the measures are temporary and because of the avian flu, which has disrupted the supply of some eggs. So they're trying to blame this on the avian flu. That's what they're saying. But this farmer is coming out and exposing them and saying that the avian flu is not affecting them. He has more eggs than ever, but he's not making any money with his eggs, and that's what's causing the problem, right? So what's really going on? Why are they implementing these rations? It's just, I feel like it's conditioning. All this stuff's conditioning to get us ready. That's what the last 2 years was, the last few years, conditioning. So when something next happens, a lot of people they already know what to do. They're programmed to like go into the state where they know what to do exactly when this situation happens again. They're just like, yes, I'm ready to do it all. I'm ready to like, and it feels like this is it too. It's like, yes, we are experiencing rationing. Like, we need to get prepared. It's just crazy. Like, they are conditioning us for Great Depression level scenarios, all right? And it seems intentional. This farmer's exposing them. This farmer's saying that he doesn't think this is real, right? So his name is Lane Humphreys. He's a farmer in Wales with 32,000 free-range hens. And he claims the supermarkets are not paying farmers for the eggs despite upping the prices for consumers. You've probably seen $5 dozen eggs at your grocery store, at least $3. And do you remember a couple years ago? It was 86 cents, 50 cents. Some places like a quarter. It's like a quarter for a dozen eggs. Some places you could get this, right? And now it's $5, $5, $6, at least $3. That's like the lowest I'm seeing anywhere. But a lot of eggs, $5 a dozen. This is insane. And he says they're not paying the farmers. He says the price increases are not reaching the farmers, even though the cost for producing feed, electricity, and new birds have gone up. It's what this other farmer is warning too, guys. This is systematic, and this is worldwide. That farmer was in New Jersey. This farmer's in the UK. This is worldwide. And yeah, energy prices going up are going to affect him. UK has the highest energy prices in the world. It's crazy. He said, quote, "They are taking things a bit overboard by rationing. It'll create panic buying. The media is getting it wrong by saying it's bird flu when it's the supermarkets not buying for a fair price, which is the issue." Quote, "There is going to be an egg shortage. There will be less and farmers can't afford to produce. There was a bird flu last year and there wasn't a shortage of eggs because we could afford to produce." Right? So he's saying they had a bird flu last year. It was fine. They were fine last year. They made up for it. The problem is the supply chain. The problem is the feed cost exponentially more. All right. I bought a bag a couple weeks ago, actually. I couldn't even get chicken feed at my feed store. I could only get scratch grains. Right. That's all I could get at my feed store. And then that was like $45 for scratch grains. I was like, I didn't even know, like, I was like, okay, I had to get it, but I was just like in shock. I was like, what is happening right now? Like, this is not normal. I'm normally paying, like $20, maybe 25 max for like a 50-pound bag of crumble or pellets or something, layer pellets. But they don't even have that. And this is a feed store. This is an animal feed store. They didn't have any pellets or crumble at all, right? So just the feed alone, because it's all tied to corn, it's all tied to diesel, it's all tied to farmers harvesting their crops, right? If food prices go up, feed prices go up for the animals, and then meat prices go up even more. It's all just a giant chain, and it gets worse. The further down the chain you get, the more messy it gets, right? And the harder it gets for these farmers. And these aren't massive farmers, these are like mid-size, medium-range farmers, 32,000 free-range hens. And he's struggling, all right? Struggling. And what is he supposed to do? There's a lot of people that are just getting out of the business. They're saying, I'm just going to grow for my family. They're saying this is too volatile. And then you're going from hyperinflation to depression to recession to all this stuff. And it's like everything costs too much. And then prices go down. And then you can't sell it's too volatile. You have to be growing your crop for 6 months. You know what I mean? In this day and age, the market could be totally different 6 months from now. And you could be completely screwed by the time you harvest your crops, all right? You're over here thinking, all right, fertilizer's going up, all this stuff's going up. The crop's got to be at least 2-3 times more. And then when you go to sell, it's disappointing. It's not what you need. What are you supposed to do? You can't keep operating like this year after year at a loss. And they're saying that 2023 fertilizer scarcity, all this stuff is going to get even worse because it's all derivatives of fossil fuels. All the synthetic fertilizers are just fossil fuel derivatives. Most of them, not all of them. Most of them are just fossil fuel derivatives. The new synthetic fertilizers that we've created in the last 50, 70 years that feed the world, that allow us to have billions of people, right? That's what's done it. And it's being taken away. And he's saying it's the supermarkets doing it too. They are implementing these rationing. He's saying he has eggs to sell. They just won't buy the eggs. And they're selling eggs for $5, but they won't buy the eggs from him for a price that he needs. You know what I mean? They're probably trying to offer him $1 a dozen or something. When it probably takes him $2 at least, whatever, $2.50 to even get a dozen eggs in this day and age. Right? You know what I mean? He's operating on these thin margins, couple dollar margins on per dozen. And if one little thing goes up a little bit, that's wiped out. That's wiped out, right? And your whole buyer, your whole supply chain for your eggs could just be cut off if they're not going to pay the price for it, all right? And instead of just paying the price, maybe taking a loss, all right? I'm sure the supermarkets, I'm sure some of them are struggling too, all right? But instead of doing that, they just implement rations. They're just like, we're just going to ration stuff. It's just crazy. It just feels like we're in a place where it's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, right? And especially going into 2023, all the harvests from this year have been anemic because all the farmers did fertilize way less because fertilizer did go up 300%. So to make up for that, they put half as much fertilizer on. They're still paying 150% more. You know what I mean? If it goes up 300%, they're still paying way more, even if they put half the fertilizer on, right? So they cut back. That's going to affect yields. There was less watering. All throughout California, farmers were deciding, do I need to water my perennials or do I need to water my annuals? And the decision was made, most farms, to water their perennials, like their fruit trees and things like that, because they have a bigger investment in them. They take years to grow and produce, you know what I mean? Not the annuals that take months, but it's still a complete loss for them. They had these crops growing, and they were declaring a state of emergency over this. I made a whole video on it like a month or two ago, how there's a state of emergency in California right now because they're deciding, like, do I grow my tomatoes? Like, do I water my tomatoes or do I water my almonds? Like, they don't know what to do. And a lot of farmers are just watering the almonds and things like that because they've had these trees for 10 years and they don't want to get rid of them. They don't want them to die, all right, because they produce every single year. So this is the kind of dystopia that is being created all around us. And now even U.S. energy regulators are warning that over 80 million Americans are at risk of grid emergencies and power blackouts, all right? 80 million. The number keeps rising. Last month, it was just New England was at risk, okay? I made a whole video on that. All the New England states, a massive energy provider came out and said, we don't have the energy for winter, and there's probably going to be rolling blackouts this winter to make up for the energy reduction, okay? But now it's spreading. Now it's going nationwide. It's hitting everywhere. It's not just New England now. It's going everywhere. So a quarter of Americans are at risk of winter power blackouts and grid emergencies. This is coming out of Yahoo News. It says large swaths of North America may face blackouts and other energy emergencies during bouts of extreme cold this winter as coal and natural gas supplies tighten, according to a U.S. regulatory agency. The electric grids at most risk of supply shortfalls are in Texas, the central U.S. system stretching from the Great Lakes to Louisiana, New England, and the Carolinas, the North American Electric Reliability Council said in its seasonal assessment on Thursday. All right? This is crazy, guys. They are getting us ready. And they keep telling us, get ready for blackouts. I've never seen many warnings for blackouts in my life. I've never seen this. And I've been into like news stuff like this long time, decade plus. I've been into all this kind of news, like looking for this kind of news, seeing what's coming next. I have never in my life seen this many warnings that they're gonna shut the power off in the middle of winter. This is crazy, guys. You need to get ready. You need to have a wood stove. They're saying Texas, U.S. central systems stretching from the Great Lakes to Louisiana. So Great Lakes all the way down to Louisiana. It's a massive region. New England and the Carolinas, right, are all at risk. It says severe weather may stress grids by causing demand to soar while supplies of natural gas, coal, and backup fuel oil are all tight, leaving little room for error, according to the report. Quote, the trend we see more areas at risk. We see more retirements of critical generation, fuel challenges, and we are doing everything we can, said the director of the NERC, all right, this regulatory agency. So the trend we are seeing is more areas at risk, more retirements of critical generation. I keep talking about this, how they keep turning off all of our coal power plants. I was talking about a little bit yesterday. Go watch my video yesterday if you didn't see it. I touched on this, how they are destroying our hydroelectric power dams in the U.S. as well. Multiple ones just got approved to be destroyed. Why are we doing this? These are hydroelectric power dams that supposedly produce clean energy. This supposedly clean green energy, and we're just destroying them. Multiple ones. Go check that out after this video. It's crazy. That's just one of the things in that video. Lots of other stuff. A government insider is also warning of a massive crisis is about to happen. So go check that out after this video. But he's right? Retirements of critical generation. Why are we getting rid of all this? So, and he also says there's little room for error. All right, little room for error with this stuff. That's how tight the supplies are getting. This is sketchy, guys. This is really getting to it. And they're saying a quarter of Americans are at risk, over 80 million Americans, right? A quarter of Americans is around 82 million Americans. That is unacceptable in the United States of America to be this U.S. regulatory agency comes out and say, yep. And he's saying this is going to continue for years. He also said, quote, these challenges don't kind of appear out of nowhere. He said this didn't appear out of nowhere. This is engineered. This is what this regulatory agency, the North American Electric Reliability Council, is a U.S. energy regulatory agency. It monitors the grid and makes sure everyone's doing what they need to do on the grid and make sure the grid's good to go, right? And he's saying these challenges don't appear out of nowhere, right? They don't just kind of appear out of nowhere. That's what he said. He's saying this is going on for a reason, right? Retirements of critical generation, fuel challenges, and more areas at risk. Prices of gas are high because of below average stockpiles and strong exports to Europe as Russia wages war. A possible railroad strike also threatens to impact coal supplies. Right? I was talking about that a couple days ago, how 3 out of 13, or 3 out of 12, I think, unions have not agreed, and they all have to agree. And we are also facing another railroad strike as well coming up. Quote, as the demand for electricity risk outpacing the available supply during peak winter conditions, consumers face an inconceivable but real threat of rolling blackouts, right? So he's saying the demand is outpacing the supply. How is that happening? When is that this was never a problem. And supposedly we're more energy efficient than ever. We have everyone has energy efficient windows and all this stuff, you know what I mean? Smart thermostats, all this stuff's in play. But for some reason, we can't meet the demand for winter to keep people warm so people don't freeze in the winter, right? I just don't understand how this is possible. Quote, it doesn't have to be this way, but absent a shift in state and federal energy policy, this is a reality we face for years to come. So he even says, quote, it doesn't have to be this way. It seems like this guy's trying to come out and say can we please stop? Guys, you're going to crash the grid. You're going to cause a grid failure. This could have catastrophic consequences. And when there's these blackouts and surges and stuff, this equipment is at risk to be damaged as well. That's the other thing that they never talk about. It's just oh, it's no big deal. We just have rolling blackouts. This could damage the grid equipment to have these surges and blackouts going on our grid. It's just like if you overload a generator or something like that. I've done this before. I've overloaded my generator with my RV on accident because I had the AC going and I accidentally turned on the microwave, right? It's a big no-no. If you've ever been in an RV, you can't have both on, most likely, unless you got like a um, really big one, right? But mine's only 30 amp. But I did that. It overloaded my generator and it stopped producing power. It's still on, okay? But it stopped producing power. It's blinking red. And I was worried. I had to let it run for a little bit and get going. And it spurted out a bunch of smoke and all this stuff. It can damage the equipment too, overloading it and having these blackouts, all this stuff. Like, that's the other thing. What if we overload the grid and there's massive damage to it and we can't repair it, right? I was reporting on this when there was the hurricane going on in Florida last month, or I guess it was a couple months ago now, into September, I think it's when it was, that the energy companies were saying that they are going to use all of their stockpile of transformers in Florida, essentially, like the nationwide stockpile. They're essentially sending it to Florida to rebuild Florida's grid right now. And they were saying that these transformers are critical and they require very specialized metal to create. And they take months to create, and they're only made in one single factory. There's only one factory in all of the US that makes a specialized metal for the transformers. I don't know why. This is what they're saying, though. And they're saying that hopefully there's not another massive grid down situation or a grid damage situation because the US is short on transformers, right? So that's also another massive risk that we could see, is if the grid is overloaded, if we do have these blackouts, we have all these surges, we could see damage to the equipment. What if it has to be rebuilt? What if massive parts of the grid has to be rebuilt and they don't have the parts for it? It takes months to rebuild it, right? That's the problem with the EMP as well, too, is if it hits a part of the grid at once, it could take who knows how long to replace it, because all these parts, where are all these parts going to come from, right? And if it's China or someone dropping an EMP, like, definitely where are the parts coming from? Where are they? You know what I mean? We are at risk. This is a huge risk. And let's dive into the few other things he said. They also said this. It says the central U.S. grid managed by the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator has tight power supplies after a large number of generators shut last winter, and its Gulf Coast plants haven't done enough to protect against cold weather, the regulatory agency also said. So they were talking about Texas, they were talking about all these different states and the different problems that they are experiencing. But I thought this one was the worst one because it said their supplies are tight after they shut down a large number of their power generators last winter. Why would you shut down your generators in the middle of winter? I just don't even understand this decision making. It just doesn't make sense to me, honestly. And they're saying that the Gulf Coast plants haven't done enough to protect against cold weather, all right? So it's happening, guys. It's getting real. It's getting closer. We are getting warnings every day. I've never seen this many warnings saying blackouts are coming. Blackouts. We're going to black out. We're going to turn the power out. And that's what they want. That's how they will control everything, right? That's the control system, is shutting off the power, right? Because everything stops when the power's off. Everything's relying on it. All the shipping, all the movement, all the cargo, all the banking, everything's reliant on the power, right? And on the grid. So if they can shut that down, they have power. And even Klaus Schwab, he was saying a couple years ago, this video was circulating around, and he was saying the next, you know what, the next hamdemic, all right, hamming out, it will be a cyber one, right? And he was saying we will have massive blackouts and internet outages and communication outages, all this stuff. That's what Klaus Schwab was saying a couple years ago at his World Economic Forum thing. I think it was like 2019, 2020, something like that. It was a couple years ago. This widely circulated footage, and he was saying the next thing, he was called it a cyber you know what. All right, I don't want to say the word, but cyber you know what. He was saying that's going to be the next you know what. Like we had the last 2 years, he said the next one will be a cyber one. All right, and we will have lockdowns and all this stuff because the grid is down, because the grid is failing. All right, so get prepared now. Get a wood stove. Critical. Have some kind of chimney or wood stove, especially wood stove though, because then you can cook on it. Even a really small one. All right, even a small one. You don't have to have like a giant, massive kitchen one. Those are super cool. Right, but even a little one, a little tiny one, could save your life. You could cook a pot of noodles on it, boil some water on it, whatever, and heat your family, heat your body, get warmth to you. Because it's different. Like, I was in my RV the other day when it was freezing, right? There's no heat on in there or anything. I was getting some stuff out of it. And it was so cold in there. Even though it's inside, it almost felt colder inside than it was outside, right? It's one of these things where you're going to be freezing. Even like you think you're just in your house, you're going to be freezing. It might be colder in your house than outside because there might be sun outside, but it still might be 15 degrees outside. You know what I mean? Have a wood stove, have a backup heat source, right? Get a generator, get little space heaters as well. Get those like warmer pads. There's these emergency warmer pads, like hand warmer pads. You could like stuff those in your jacket, stuff like that. If you were super cold, all right? Have layers, have a ton of winter clothes. Even if you live in Florida, even if you live in wherever, it still gets cold there sometimes. There could be an emergency. There could be a weird fluke. There could be a weird, who knows, right? They've admitted this. I've made whole videos on this. The White House even admitted this last month, that they are ramping up their geoengineering program. All right, this is a real thing. It's not made up. The White House even admitted it last month that they are looking into geoengineering programs to help, whatever, lower the temperatures and like rain and all this stuff. You never know. We could see, who knows what could happen, right? You never know. Or there could just be a fluke too. There could be a fluke. It snowed in Florida before. There's been hail in Florida, stuff like that. I've had hail. There's hailed a bunch when I was a kid before in Florida. Not a bunch, but multiple times it hailed when I was a kid in Florida, right? So you never know. Even if you think you're in the deep south and you're safe, get prepared, all right? You never know. And they could shut off the power. They could be doing weird stuff. You never know, guys, all right? Be prepared. Get a wood stove. Get a generator. All the stuff. Get a little solar panel. Have it all. It's good to have multiple different things. You can have a natural gas generator. You can have a gasoline generator. You can have a diesel generator. There's solar. There's all these different alternatives that you can have. Have them all right? Stock up on these things. Make it your goal, because that should be your goal anyways, is to be like less reliant on the grid itself anyways, because it's vulnerable, guys. It's vulnerable. So get prepared. Stay prepared. Thank you guys for watching, and have a big old blessed day.